Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Mate, how are you?
Oh, mate, I'm excited. I mean, there's something new happened.
Something magical.
I know. We're
standing side by side for a first time in a while.
I know. There's no sort of. I didn't have to do a download, like a speed test to see my download and upload. And Iris is
in the room.
She's in the room.
She's in the house. We just heard her drop something.
Which takes the pressure off us. But so to decipher all that, folks, Ben and I are in the studio together. Yep. We did a podcast on the 7 grades of financial well-being. I think it was episode 275, Ben.
Correct.
And that was the podcast before the following week after that.
When we all went home.
It all kicked off. Coronavirus. It was a couple of weeks before. I remember having a Facebook Live with Nerida going, this coronavirus thing, is there anything to be worried about here? And then all of a sudden, whoosh, go, it's sort of...
Oh, you know what? It's a supply issue. It's a supply issue. Nothing more to worry about. Yep, I got that a little bit wrong too.
So it's nice to be in the studio with you and the Stig, and we've got our the rest of our crew online here at via Zoom, so it's fun. But today we're going to have we're going to do the 4 types of wealth, Ben, which is really
I'm excited about this topic, Bryce. It's a new way of looking at things. I quite like it.
So we're going to go through that. But before we do, just wanted to I've been hinting for the last few weeks around the fact that we're doing a launch of our online course this week at a discount, 40% off, Ben.
Wow.
So I just wanted to reflect on the way that you get your information, because I remember I've said this on the podcast before, where the first time I was getting information around property investing was largely through a book.
Yep.
And then, which was Jan Summers' book.
Yep, the first.
And then it went to the Australian Property Investor magazine, which then had a workshop that I attended, where I parked my car. It was in Mount Claremont. I didn't know where it was. I walked in. And then the way that the information was presented was, do you remember those film, I'll see if I can describe this on audio, but do you remember when you had the overhead projector?
Yeah.
And then you had those clear films that you would pick up off your pile and you put the next one on and you talk to it.
And it produced an image up on the big screen.
Image up on the screen through the magnifier. And then, so
no data projectors back in those days, mate.
Definitely. That was a luxury if you could get your hands on one of those.
That was for the rich people.
Yeah. Well, even the spruikers back then weren't rich enough to have one of those. That's right. So we put the slides on, and then all of a sudden it progressed to then the magazines. Obviously had a couple of competitors. A few other magazines came out, and then we've been really proud of the fact that we weren't the first property podcast, but we were early adopters to this, and now there's lots of podcasts around. But we've been doing this now for 6 years. Yeah. And then really with the advent of video, people really want to get their learning either through audio like this when they're doing the dishes, going for a walk at the gym, driving in the car, on the train, on the commute, they can listen to it. Yep. But also the way that we want to interact, we want to learn is there's just an explosion of online learning. Yeah. And so we've developed a course, we're really proud of it. And the challenge with all of that information is when I go back to those overhead projectors with those slides in a group of people. It was really simple it was much simpler because there wasn't a heap of messages being thrown at me. It was like one message, there was no distraction. Whereas now there is so much information, the challenge is around curating that. So the reason I tell that backstory is because one of the benefits I think of the Start and Build course that we've developed allows us to curate all of the information that, we're 335 episodes on our podcast too. Someone new to our community, that's a long time to catch up. Yeah. So it's being able to curate all of that information and present it in a way that's interactive. You can see you and me doing it on video. And so I want to encourage anyone who is keen to educate themselves, keen to avoid FOMO, keen to buy properties with the basic foundations of education. I want to encourage them to at least go and have a look at our online course, because it's only for this week that we've discounted it by this much. so that as many people can get access to affordable education as possible, but also making sure they get the right information so they can actually go and act in the marketplace.
Well, I mean, if I can expand on that too, Bryce, I mean, you know, going to all of the seminars that I did back in the day as a young sort of early 20s kid, I used to, you know, you're in a room of maybe 200, 300 people for some of the better speakers, you know, the Ed Chans of this world. You know, those were the types of people that I was interested in listening to. And there was so much information coming at you. You couldn't say pause, stop, rewind.
Yeah, true.
So I think the luxury these days of having online, on-demand type courses is that when you are getting into a complex area, or we might be moving pretty quick, what we might think is, but if you're new to this information, you can actually go, wait a minute, I need, because I always just sit there, write notes and go, but you're moving on to, and you know, you're not going to put your hand up in front of 300 people. Can you just slow down a little bit? You know? So I think that's also the joy of being able to learn in your pace, at your speed, and then also be able to go back and repeat and rinse and repeat that information. So I think that is the future of how most education's moving. And if we see what the universities are doing as well, where they're doing these sort of online courses and those types of things. So I think breaking them down into the modules and doing that type of work is going to help the students who want to understand property, want to understand cash flow, want to understand all of those things. It's all available there too.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is whenever we have a new team member join our company, we always get them to go through this online course. Mandatory. So that they can actually get a sense of exactly what it is that we're working towards, how we serve our community, how we serve our clients. Yep. So I certainly want to encourage you to go and check that out. It's thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build.
And 40% off, hey?
40% off. And is AND, not ampersand, Ben. But
good.
Go and check it out because I want to encourage you to get your hands on that. We've priced it, well, first of all, 40% off, but it's also affordable because we're sick of people spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. We're talking a fraction of the cost. So go and check that out, thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build. We're still giving away some to people who have left us with a review, Ben. This one's from Ruffle SSZS. Everything,
love it.
You like that one? Everything I didn't know I needed. Such a great and friendly presentation of everything property. As a newbie millennial, this has been a great way to get an education on such a complex space. Love it. So Ruffles, let us know. Reach out to us. We're going to give you free access to the Start and Build course. This one here is from Status1, status with an I, not status with a U. Hi guys, just wanted you to know I've been investing in shares for the last 4 years, having been told this was the only way to make good money if you had small amounts of capital. That is until my brother put me onto your podcast. I want you to know I've purchased my first investment property in Queensland and very close to purchasing my second property, all thanks to you guys.
Cool.
You've changed my way of thinking and opened my mind to longer term investments and helped me to believe that it's okay to rent while you build your portfolio in other areas. Thank you for all your help. Don't really understand the AFL banter, but go the Wallabies and everyone who plays for the Manly Sea Eagles.
Notice I'm skipping past the AFL banter at the moment.
I've noticed
the old Pies are struggling.
I noticed you haven't talked up how Freo's raced up, taken over Collingwood in the... The only good news for you is you're beating me in the tips, which is probably the first time for 4 years, and your football team is underneath. So,
hey, can I just make a note to Stats? Well done. What you've discovered is the power of leverage and the power of being able to control the bigger asset, which is one of the big features of what we're trying to teach here. Is that if you are sensible around cash flow and don't borrow too much, you can actually control the bigger asset, and it's that asset over time that brings home the bacon. So good on you for discovering that story.
Well said, Status. And here's the third one. Big Coyones, I think, Ben. Big Cole Jones. There we go. Can't read. The title is Finally Act on It. And here we go. Thanks, Bryce. I got distracted. Thanks, Ben and Brian. Okay, that's how meaningful. Thanks, Ben and Brian. Truly appreciate the time and effort you put into this weekly masterclass. Having listened for a while now, I am up to date and saddened I have to wait for Thursdays to roll around for the next instalment. A first world problem. After much consideration, we finally acted on all the knowledge gained and brought our first investment property. My partner is now fully on board. Her realisation came after speaking to a number of people slightly older than ourselves who haven't given their retirement any consideration. With a few more years up our sleeves and time doing the heavy lifting, we know the fortunate position we're in. She's even pointed a few folk to your podcast and book direction, of course. There is much more we can learn and appreciate. It's all a journey. Keep up the amazing work and banter. Go to the All Blacks. Cheers, Colin.
Wow, we have a few people in the rugby space. Hey, I really love Big Cole Jones.
Yeah. This is going to set me up.
It was a genius tactic by calling you Brian. Genius. Here he is getting a free course because he's gone something different. So you maybe call me Bernadette or something like that. Or
we're going to get more creative than that.
And Benny.
Yeah.
Benny. I don't like Benny. So if you call me Benny, you might get read out.
You don't like Benny?
I don't like Benny.
What happened there? Tell us the backstory.
Well, Benji. Benji, that's the one.
Yeah.
You know the dog?
Yeah.
Benji, that I don't. For some reason, if someone calls me Benji, I'm like, not sure about that one.
Ibis, Benji. Did you see that one? I'm sorry, folks. I'm just writing a note there. Benji.
So anyone who gives us a 5-star review and calls me Benji, I'm coming after you.
Folks, I just want to say, if you do go and put a 5-star review, and I will read you out. There is no doubt. So, folks, reach out to us. We are going to give you a copy of Start and Build. We want you to really set yourself up. So look at that. And also for those folks, this will go out at 3 o'clock on Thursday. So we'll have done we're doing a Facebook Live this afternoon, but by the time this goes to air, it'll be previously done. So if you go to Facebook, you can check out the Facebook Live you and I did on Tuesday, which was top 3 FOMO mistakes. And you can go and look at the replay. I'm sure Stiggy will put all the links in the show notes of the one we did today, which is the early warning sign where investors go wrong with FOMO.
Early warning.
So
red light flashing.
So go and check that out.
Sounds good.
And Ben, also with that Facebook Live, that we're going to give people an opportunity to get our top 10 FOMO mistakes property investors make. You've got to just have a look at the design of this. Our team's done a wonderful job putting the words together, putting the design together.
So it's downloadable?
It's downloadable, it's free, and it goes across quite a number of pages. There's a heap of resources in there. And Ben, even here on page number 13, there's your real life story here about a property that you bought and the experience that you've
first property that I bought. It told me to sell it, and then it's cost me $500,000 or more by now. I paid $120,000 for that property, and now I look at what the median price in the suburb is, and I have a little tear, the corner of my eye. It's one that got away. But again, through lack of knowledge and experience and understanding, I should have said, I know more about, you gave me tax advice, mister, because this thing was positively geared pretty early on. No, I should have got wealth advice, not tax advice, and building out that. So there's a story in there well worth checking out.
I can see the pain is still tangible for you there, mate. Folks, go and get this. We'll put the link in the show notes, but it's thepropertycouch.com.au/FOMO, where you can go and get this report. Check it out. It is, we're really proud of it, and hopefully it gives you some insights into making sure you don't make those mistakes in a market that's rife full of FOMO. Hey, guess what?
What's that?
My Mindset Minute theme today is coming to a close. The book, I've just read the last chapter. So next week, I'm going to summarise all of the learnings.
All right, just to get an extra week out of it.
I think it's important that...
I wanted you to summarise, so I'm glad you're going to do that.
So that heckle was just for a cheap laugh then?
Of course. Isn't it always?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm guilty as well. So my Mindset Minute theme today is the last chapter of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and part 3, How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking. Chapter 30 is making people glad to do what you want. Always make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. Gunter Schmidt, who took our course in West Germany, told of an employee in the food store that he managed who was negligent about putting the proper price tags on the shelves where the items were displayed. This caused confusion and customer complaints. Reminders, admonitions, confrontations with her about this did not do much good. Finally, Mr. Schmidt called her into his office and told her he was appointing her supervisor of price tag posting for the entire store, and she would be responsible for keeping all of the shelves properly tagged. This new responsibility and title changed her attitude completely, and she fulfilled her duties satisfactorily from then on. People are more likely to do what you would like them to do when you use principle number 30, make the other person happy about doing the thing that you suggest.
Oh, I like it.
Brought it home with a strong
there. Rounded it out, so I'm looking forward to the summary. But have you got anything for me? Any takeaway?
Well, I did think about this, and then I thought, well, you just play a straight bat every single time when I'm trying to put your decisions around, like, because you're a bit like the price tags. Let's be honest, you keep following a team that's a bit shabby.
I knew the reference would get back to the Pies at some point. Bit shabby. Greatest winning team of all time.
Yeah, but then I thought to myself, oh, he'll just go the greatest winning team of all time, the greatest sort of turner-upper of grand finals and not taking home the chocolates of all time.
True.
So, but anyway, I'll let it go. I didn't want to. Okay. I didn't want to role play with you today. So, hey, central theme today is the 4 types of wealth. So we talked about it before. We in this podcast we talk a lot about one of the types, which is essentially around the money, right? The financial wealth that that people aspire to. But there's 3 others.
There are,
and I think it's important that we cover them. And you'd actually think we're going to start with the money first, but we're not.
We're not. We'll get there last.
Well, it's second in my list. You're right.
All right, we'll go
reshuffle,
second.
but
that's fine.
But so the first one is social wealth.
Social wealth,
which is status. We've talked about this a bit, Ben, and it is the challenge that people face where they're more interested in status design than they are in lifestyle design. And I reckon we want to labour on this because it's not helped by Instagram.
No.
It's not helped by the old-fashioned keeping up with the Joneses.
No.
And there's a saying, we put it on our Instagram, so you can go and check this out if you want, but you've got to act your wage. You know, stop spending money that you don't have to impress people that you don't like, and putting yourself into a situation where you're on credit, you look rich, but you're not. So I think status design is something that we need to address because if you're going to chase status design, it often comes at the expense of the second one, which is that financial wealth.
It's a big journey, Bryce, because ultimately what we're really saying to people is you've got to love yourself. You've got to feel comfortable in your own skin, right? Because the most people who are going through life are trying to find their tribe, trying to find their identity, trying to make connections that are, and the best connections you ever make are the ones where you have a value alignment. And with the world where it is right now, with far right views and far left views, and not much happening in the middle, people are trying to work that out, right? And they're trying to work that out in terms of, okay, well, where do I fit in that? And so if they've got the latest things and I need to have the latest things, and they're also got friends who might be semi-influencers and they're making money online and now I want to try and make... So there's all these different sort of challenges that millennials and even, people our age, young kids, where we put them into school, so we're always making these types of decisions. Now, if you can unpack that back to the core, and you get yourself into the work where Jamin's done, story state strategy, really important work, and you start to then identify the important things in your life, and if that's just getting around in tracksuit pants and being cool and just being close to family or whatever, because that's pretty much me. That's why you don't see me posting anything, because Jane would never post any of our stuff because she'd be too embarrassed. Have
you got the black moccasins that all Collingwood supporters wear?
No, I've got dark brown.
Yeah.
Dark brown.
Well, that's very Collingwood-esque, really.
Very much get around there. You'll see me wandering around Moonee Ponds in my brown moccasin. Point being is that, it's really important that if you can work out who you are and what's important to you, you should work out that some of the material things aren't as important.
You'll soon see as we go through these 4 that status design will rob you of some of the others. And in particular, I won't preempt that, but you touched on it before. If you've got a big hole in your heart or you've got a big hole in your sense of self, you will just use all these status designs to try and fill it right. And the challenge is that it's temporary, because people want to improve their status through an appearance of intelligence, wealth, style.
Slow down. Get all these out, because these are important.
Happiness, power, social standing, and physical appearance. So if you think about the enormous ways that you can go off on a tangent around this, and spending money that you do not have to chase these things so that you look a certain way, all because you're trying to cover for a fact that you do not feel great about yourself, or that you don't feel like you're enough. And if you need to go back to episode 300, where Jamin talks us through some of this stuff. But it's really this attempt to try and fill a hole through all of these things. Again, intelligence, wealth,
Yep.
style, happiness, power, social standing, physical appearance. That's where you will undo, particularly financial wealth, but you'll see a few more.
Well, you talk about that through also significance as being one of the big important drivers for people. We want significance. And when you're doing this work on yourself, it is all about being adequate, and not, not having this sense of being inadequate and obviously sense of failure. So if we relate that back to money, as the way in which that's the lens that I look through in terms of my professional life. A lot of the people have fear of talking about money because that sense of inadequate. So when they're asked the question, how are you going with your money? The normal response is, actually, I'm okay. Because I don't really want to necessarily talk about that in a sense of vulnerability. But if you can move to that conversation, there will be breakthroughs in terms of getting back to, the fundamentals for you. So I think that's really important.
There is a way that you can decrease your status really quickly, and that's by feeling stupid, right?
Yeah.
And that can come from if you've made a purchase around some of these flashier ways to improve your status. If it proves to make you, like you bought a flashy car, and then it gets repossessed, you look stupid, right? So your status drops enormously, right?
Yeah.
But even to the point where when we're trying to educate people on the basics of money management and the basics of investing and self-funding a future. But for a lot of people, the reason they do not want to talk to others about it is because they do not want to actually acknowledge the fact that they don't know enough about this stuff. Because if they feel stupid, they will have this. They'll tell themselves this story that their status will decrease. So
money's emotional, Bryce. That's what happens.
That's important. But I guess it's just a reminder that the behind the scenes is all, in most cases, a lot different to the highlights reel.
Yeah.
And most of the ways that we see status being flashed across is usually a highlights reel. And we're not actually seeing that behind the scenes. And I think that's really important. So
I think it's a huge takeaway to sort of say those people who you can connect with and be yourself, your true self, your relaxed self, even spending time where there's not a lot of conversation going on, but know that you can be in that relaxed environment. I had that with some of my high school mates. We can be sitting around with a line in the water or something and just not talk for 40 minutes. And that's actually completely fine. Like, we don't feel like there's this unawkwardness in the air or whatever. Same sort of thing when you develop those deeper and richer types of relationships. All of the other stuff then starts to feel a little bit, meaningless. But I get it when you're young. You're still trying to find that tribe, and you're still trying to work out where that sits. So we've lived. We've got lived experience coming up to 50. I mean, you still, with your baby face, what are you, 38 again still, or you're a little bit older than that?
I wish, mate. My eyes are, But, yes.
But the point
the point is, I'll never be as old as you.
Good point. But that, I think it is an important message, right? Because I was, in my earlier 20s, I was trying to find my way. I went and got some professional help to sort of work out how does the world work, and because I was in a rush to get somewhere. But ultimately, as you go through that process, you start to understand yourself a lot better. And when you do that, the whole idea of social wealth and showcasing that in some way becomes less and less. And it is interesting. Even, I mean, if I had been speaking to myself from 20 odd years ago, the first thing I'd be talking to someone about if I'm trying to impress them is probably what I've got. I've got a couple of investment properties, life's going all right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's because I'm awkward and I'm trying to work out, well, that's what everyone, I want to show that I'm a bit successful. These days, I don't talk really anything about, my net worth or any of those types of things because I don't need to. I've worked out over time that that's not relevant. And I'm trying to do other things in terms of what that looks like. So,
well, what's important is change, Ben, because as you become more secure in yourself as you get older, you don't care if someone drives up and pulls out the front of your house and sees if you've got a European car or if you've got a big house. It's more about do I feel a sense of peace on a Sunday night when I'm not dreading going to a place of work, or am I worried about the phone ringing because I can't pay the bill, or do I have financial peace that says I can actually just enjoy the simple things and rock and wrestle with my kids or catch up with a true friend who knows me for 30, 40 years, rather than trying to impress people through status, which sadly some people still do 40s, 50s, 60s until they...
Or have your kids come home and asked you how much you're worth, Dad, or what's our house worth, Dad, or is this a mansion? Or so my kids are doing that, right? So obviously I live in a...
Well, I'll answer that. I've consciously told them what we paid for it, what it's worth, how much a holiday is, because I want them to actually know the value. But I didn't have that as growing up. That's
no,
for sure.
no, I never.
It's like the Secret Service in my house.
My youngest, who has an interest in money, likes to spend a lot of it.
Yeah.
He's asking all the time in terms of, do you know this person? Have you, what do we earn? How much is the business and all of that? So he's got, it's a healthy curiosity to a point.
Yeah.
But I'm like saying, it's not relevant, H. You don't need to know all of that. All you need to know is we're okay, we're financially okay. But I do want to teach him about, we're talking about BHP shares lately, and sort of I want to buy him a couple of shares because I want him to understand the value of not spending money to make money. But it just comes back to, we live in an area where, it's probably would be considered an upmarket area that we live in. And so those conversations potentially are going along in the school as they're trying to find their tribe and where they sit in that time. And yes, there's all the latest cars are rocking up and all of that, dropping kids off at school. So I think we've just got to try and teach them early about the context, about, they shouldn't be your friends if they're just interested in, the fact that you've got a pool or whatever that is. They should be interested in terms of you've got common interests and you want to try and, enjoy some time together, right? So it is fascinating. And so if that's starting at sort of that 9 and 10 years of age, then what does it go like in terms of teen years? And so those social pressures are real.
They are.
We get it. And so we're just trying to make sure that if you are struggling with that identity, the look internally, don't necessarily look externally, and you'll do really well.
Well, you'll see that social wealth can derail the other three shortly, and we'll go through that. So number 2 is, so the first one is social wealth. The second one is financial wealth.
Yep.
We spend most of our time talking about this, Ben. Most people tend to associate wealth with financial abundance, and this is one of the obvious measures of the term. But in terms of financial wealth, we think there's 7 grades of financial well-being, and it's probably worth revisiting those, Ben, because it's been a little while since we covered this on an episode.
Yeah, well, I think, and it's going to be more and more prevalent in the work that we do moving forward, right? Because we've done the fundamentals around asset selection and all of those types of things. So the next part of the journey that we want to take the community on is how do you then measure that? So because it's going to be different for everyone. So rather than putting a dollar value on it straight away, what we want to be doing is talking about just understanding where you sit in terms of your current position and how you take that forward. So your starting point is not financial turmoil, but that's number one. If you're in financial turmoil, you need to get some professional help. If you are at financial survival, it's very clear you've made some judgment decisions that haven't gone the right way, and so you're in a bit of strife. The starting position is financial consciousness. So this is where technically this is our benchmark. This is base camp, where we start, and then we want to try and move up the ladder, and we get to financial stability. That's really important. So all of a sudden we're now starting to say, rightio, got a bit of a sense of what's going on here, still more to learn, and then we move into financial control. And this is the big piece that we've been talking about on our podcast a lot, is feeling on top of it all, without necessarily spending too much time on it, is our goal.
Yep.
That's what Money Smarts is all about. 10 minutes a month, but just feeling like you've got that money control, and now starting to lift your eyes to get into that investment space and making that money work harder for you. And then as you do that, you move towards financial peace. Now, what I love about these 7 grades is that's what we do every day. That's our purpose in terms of why we get up and what we do in our business. Is move people into financial peace. Hopefully not from financial turmoil. Hopefully we're getting them from financial consciousness or financial control, and then basically moving them through that. And there is a lot of moving parts there, but what today's lesson about is we're talking more mindset today than ever before, in terms of the technical stuff that we talk about. So but the one I really love, and I'm glad we added it, is because we do measure the progress of the clients that we're helping towards financial peace. But when someone gets to a fairly significant position, we're obviously in a great position to also have financial contribution. And from my point of view, that's where you pay it forward. That's, so if you're in a blessed position where you can then set up a trust fund maybe for the generation of children that are going to come through for education purposes, because education is everything. Or you can contribute to a cause or a purpose that you really have passion about.
It's bigger than you.
It's bigger than you, and that doesn't matter. That doesn't have to be financial either. That could just be time, because what money, financial peace gives you, the greatest thing it gives you is time, and the choice of what you do with your time. So I think that's important. If you haven't listened to a deep dive in that episode, it's 275 that we did last March. I encourage you to do that. We also, on the socials, I think on Insta, we have a nice little storybook around that, and we have a downloadable on that as well. So I think there is something to do. So we'll make sure those are in the show notes. But that's the scene setter for what we're talking about.
So let's go through that again, Ben, just to get that land. So grade 1 was financial turmoil. Grade 2 was financial survival. Grade 3 was financial consciousness. Grade 4 was financial stability. Grade 5 was financial control. Grade 6 was financial peace, and grade 7 was financial contribution.
And we have some amazing things that we're working on that are going to really bring this to life, hopefully at the second half of the year. So when I get back from my break, we're going to be really focusing in on that, and we've got some exciting things to be sharing with the community in the second half of this year. So I can't wait for that. That gets me out of bed every day.
What I like about that too, Ben, is it shows the first 6 are really a journey of the individual or of the family unit. And then grade 7 becomes, instead of just being about you and your family unit, it's about how can you impact others and make a contribution. And obvious examples are Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who are benevolent.
The Atlassian boys. You look at Mike Cannon-Brookes. He spent, I saw a story there about over $1 billion on renewable energy. So he's thinking there's an amazing opportunity here for Australia for that. So we love stories like that. And again, that's the stories that you see in the main press. But I mean, I don't know whether you caught the Twinnies episode, the Australian story on the Twinnies. So there's these girls in there, I suspect they're probably in their 40s, maybe early 50s. They do damaged and injured bird life. And so they live in Queensland, and them and their mum and their dad basically put all of their money into looking after and recuperating these birds and then sending them back out to the wild. Now, talk about purpose, talk about contribution, talk about all of those things, right? It's a charitable thing. So Jane and I, watched that the other night, and we were like, well, I'm so glad we watched that. That was such a cool little episode to see these people who are doing this type of work. So that's also what we're talking about, right? If you're in a fortunate position, or even you say to yourself, even from a financial position, you're not fortunate, but you want to dedicate your life to serve that couple of ladies, a fascinating study on twins, but also a fascinating study on what they're doing in terms of their contribution.
Well, it sounds like that might be the balance. I don't know if you've watched on Netflix Seaspiracy yet, but
no, I haven't seen one yet.
That is for anyone who's listening to this, is what it is. I felt flat significantly after that, and it's changed the way that I even if it's 50% true, it's.
So what it would give us a little backstory on it.
It's talking about how the fishing industry is overfishing the ocean and the impacts of that and the lengths that we'll go to and how it's not being talked about.
Okay.
So after that, so it sounds like you need to have that one for a bit of a balance. But a couple of things in financial wealth for this particular type. I mean, we've talked about it for 6 years, so we're not going to do anything groundbreaking today that we haven't talked about before, other than just a few key concepts around. It's about passive income over active income. So everything we're talking about to get to grade 6, which is that financial piece, is where you get more passive income coming into your wheelhouse than your expenses, so that then you are in a place where you can get type 3 back, which we'll talk about shortly. And also just the concept that wealth is measured in time and rich is measured in money.
I love that. Say that again.
Yeah, the difference is really important, because wealth is measured in time, whereas rich is measured in money. And it kind of goes to the fact that rich is kind of a four-letter word on this podcast, because it sounds dirty. It's in our industry, it's full of spruiker talk, but we've always talked about having meaningful wealth around being able to sustain a lifestyle that gives you the opportunity to do the things that you actually want to do. So
there's no race to the top. We've talked about that before in terms of the richest person in the world, what are they really got? Like, you know, and how important is that? And will they ever stay there? And when you get there, so what? Like, so, you know, I think for some of those people, if they serve well and they're successful in serving others, all power to them, right? Very empowering when you're making a true contribution and you're rewarded for that contribution. But in terms of the whole idea of being mega wealthy or being in the $1 billion club and all of that, it lessens my respect or view of some of those people if that's what they're chasing, right? If that's their motivation, it is purely around how wealthy they can be.
So type number 3 is my favourite. It's time wealth.
Yeah.
And the reason it's my favourite is because I get to spend more time with the people that I really enjoy spending time with.
Yeah.
But it also, how many times have you seen someone say, I'm doing it all for my family, they put a photo up, I'm doing it for my kid, but the kids never see them, or their family never sees them, or it's putting stress on the family. I watched going just quickly back to status, I watched an episode of the UK version of Grand Designs. And it was this guy that had a site on the side of the ocean that he had a perfectly working house in. Family was great, they could get into the water, and knocked it down and wanted to build this status improving lighthouse design, which from memory I think it was, they factored it was going to cost them $2 million.
Wow.
And after spending $4 million, they still hadn't finished it. The family had broken up. The wife was not even at the end of the episode, and this guy was a broken man. All on the fact that perfectly good house needed to turn into a status. You know, that's a massive status. If you're driving around,
well, there's also that fear of failure, right? So he's in there. He's now made it public that he's going to be building this, and so it's just that's it. Nothing else matters now because. He can't show vulnerability. No. He can't say that I made the mistake and I should never have done this.
There was a big sunk cost bias in there too because I've come this far. But I remember at the episode, Kevin McLeod drives down the driveway and only I can't remember his name, was there to meet him. And I just looked at Andrea and said, they're divorced. And she goes, oh, okay. Then the story goes through. And then Kevin says, I noticed that your wife's not here. And he goes, yeah, unfortunately. And then just started to unpack the stress and everything, and it meant that they split their ways. I mean, at what cost? And then they interviewed the daughter afterwards, and the pain that was going on through that family, all chasing status. So here's the deal. The theme of today is don't let 1 and 2 rob you of 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And so we've only just talked about 3. When we get to 4, you'll see why. But do not let the pursuit of 1 and 2 rob you of 3 and 4. So 3 is time.
And it is a fine line, right? Because I get it. I mean, I think I'm fairly driven. I think I'm a fair hard-working type person. When I make something public, because we talk about this from a planning point of view, right? When you put something on your fridge, you write it down. It actually means something, right? It means it's tangible, and there's an accountability element to it. So you're trying to get that balance right where it's like you don't go too far into a total sunk cost like what you were saying in that story versus being in a position where you need sometimes that motivation can be good for you, right? This is challenging. I'm pushing myself. I'm learning new things and I've made it public. So I don't necessarily want to fail because of that, but it can go too far. So we're not saying give up on the things that potentially do motivate you, but if the motivation is purely around status, then I don't think it's necessarily grounded in the right foundations to be able to give you what you're looking for. Or when you get to that destination, there might be a sense of,
empty.
Yep. Yeah. Did that happen for me? Am I feeling it? No. So I think that's a good little message there.
So time wealth is all about getting your time back. What surprise, surprise. But I think what's interesting about time wealth is Tim Ferriss talks about the fact that it's not $1 million in the bank that's the fantasy. The fantasy is the lifestyle of complete freedom that it supposedly allows, and it's actually just disconnecting from the idea that you need to have a fast car, an expensive house, and a private jet to actually feel a sense of time freedom and experience freedom. Because for those people who've done it, and there's heaps of people doing it now, there's a bunch of YouTube crew that are just cruising around Interestingly, that they monetize it, so it actually funds
Yeah,
what
I was
they're doing.
about to say, it's like, hello.
But the important thing is to do some of the things that you would like to do actually is cheaper than you think it is.
Yeah.
Like I recently went over to Perth with my family at Easter, and we got on, you'd know Rottnest Island really well.
Yep.
We spent the day snorkeling through some of the amazing reefs and bays that you've got over there that are just world class. And it cost us a ticket over on the boat, and we brought a snorkel with us. It cost us very little to have an outstanding day that the kids still talk about. And when I talk to them, that Dad, wish we could go back to Geordie Bay and do some of the things we were doing. So I reckon for our community, just having that concept land that you can actually do these things that don't cost a lot of money, that give you an enormous sense of experience, that takes the pressure off having to chase big goals around finances, that puts the other, top 4 at risk as well. I think that's really, really important. So if we can understand that being financially rich and having the ability to live like a multimillionaire are fundamentally two very different things, I think that actually helps people set realistic goals and just remove themselves from a perceived chasing that only puts you back into that status wealth chasing type.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who uses their knowledge and skill sets to advance themselves, both in their careers or financially, big tick. And if you're investing in something, do the research, do the fundamentals, spend that time, because that time will pay you back in spades on the decisions you say yes to, but also on the decisions that you say no to. But as we've talked about, is you let time do the heavy lifting when it comes to being able to create that, because really, the most valuable things in the world, are you saying, Bryce, is your freedom of time and the choices that you make. And we've talked about this before in the podcast. All the research points to experiences as being the greatest lifter of mental health and also satisfaction, and not having that emptiness, because you've been able to connect on a human level with other people to share those experiences, or on a cultural level to be able to share those experiences. And that, to me, is priceless. How I got there on a budget airline, how I got to a bus to get to the destination for the festival or whatever, and I'm staying in a youth hostel, that is also part of the flavour of the experience, right? Yeah. It's like, people use that as a toilet. I would have thought that's a tip, but but you do talk about those types of experiences. But then you're back into what an adventure, what an uplifting thing, and you come back to this whole idea that life is really around those types of experiences, and being able to immerse yourself in them, you will find that level of happiness that far beats the size of your bank account, in terms of what that story is. So I think that really is important.
I'll give advice to any newlyweds. We've got a couple that have happened in our business recently, and anyone who says, what's your advice for people that are planning their marriage? I'll just say, just embrace the experience of the day, and if things go pear-shaped, actually just realise they're the things you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And I use my own wedding as an example. We got married in Fiji back in 2008, and Andrea's dad comes up to me and he goes, the wedding is now being put off from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and then just walks away. And I'm like, what? You can't just drop that on me then. And so then I went to Andrea and I said, your dad's just told me that the wedding's been put off from, what does that mean? Because to give you context, there was huge flexibility. We were getting married on an island.
Everyone was there.
It wasn't. And so basically, long story short, the hairdresser was coming from the mainland for all of the girls in the bridal party. Yeah. Got drunk the night before, totally slaughtered, couldn't get up get the helicopter in the morning to get over to the island. So they were a couple of hours late, and then so that just stacked everything. So, but what happened is all of my sister's a hairdresser. There was a bunch of folks that have got hair, so they all just rallied together, and it was just this bonding experience. So in the wake of a disaster, it was a bonding experience, and then the person eventually came 2 hours later, and it was fine. And I remember one of Andrea's uncles, who was a mechanic, and just explained it in a way where he said, it was kind of like just seeing these girls work together in harmony and make it all happen was kind of like, when you're bogged and you've got 2 or 3 blokes that are standing and one's in the car and one's getting the dirt out and one's putting the... And I'm thinking, well, that's a random analogy, but it actually works because it was just the harmony. But the point of that is, that's all we talk about, is that not how the flowers perfectly turned up on time, or the fact that the ceremony was amazing, or the food that everyone had. Like, people are not talking about that. So it just proves it's the experience that matters.
Well, there's another story that you've told me about that too, because people might be thinking, wait a minute, you're talking about money doesn't matter, but you've just told me that the hairdresser flew over in a helicopter. You got married in Fiji, but how much did you save by getting married in Fiji? Because that's the bit that people don't know. So
good.
Because I'm thinking they're thinking, well, wait a minute.
I can assure you, folks, in 2008 it was a budget wedding, and the reception cost us $3,000 for the food, and $2,000 for the drinks. Right, so that was it.
Yep.
And 40 people, and so the life hack here is find a new resort, because they were just stoked that we brought all these new people to their resort. They just.
So that's also a message in there in terms of...
Mate, we bootstrapped it. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, perfect.
Love it. With nothing.
And I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I do quite...
Now we want to hear it.
Here we go. Right. So I'm the sales manager of Hamilton Island, right? And so part of the jobs that I used to have to do was I used to have to go to wedding expos, bridal expos, right?
Yeah.
So, and all these people are getting married. It's very exciting, right? So we got a chapel on the island where a lot of people get married, and so obviously you've got to sit there and as people going past your booth, you're sort of saying, you're getting married, really big day and so forth. Yeah, it's going to be huge. You've got 300 people going. It's like, and so I had to, sound excited about that. And it's nice for them, right? But when you're doing it as a job, you've got to be but I'm trying to sell to get married on the island, right?
Yeah.
And now after 3 or 4 years of this and several Brido expos, I just needed to make it a bit more interesting for myself. Mm-hmm. And so I would start to ask about budgets and whether, like, how many of those big crowd do you actually want there? Like, because normally it's about, your dad or your mum saying, well, they've got to come because I went to their wedding and
that's why I got married in Fiji, mate, because then only the
people... You're stealing my point here. That's exactly right. It's like, Uncle Frank doesn't have to come. No. He doesn't have to own the day because you're going to go somewhere remote and he's going to go, I'm not putting my hand in my pocket to get there. So I started talking to people about, do you want a more intimate and try our non-denominational church on Hamilton, and here it is. And then at the end, I even got more crazier, and I started saying 2 out of 3 marriages fail. Yeah. So take this brochure. Take this brochure because your second wedding's going to be really low key. Now I picked my client. I picked the person who I was doing, and of course I'm having a joke with them, and you're going to have an amazing day.
Ben at thepropertycouch.com.au. If you're going to write in, not Bryce at the Property Couch.
You're speaking to maybe 600 people over the course of a weekend. You just got to keep it a little bit
you're like a heart surgeon, really, aren't you? Like, it's just another heart to you, whereas the person who's going through the surgery, it's their one and only heart, Ben.
But as an advisor, you've got to care, but not that much. Yeah, so if you want to bring it into that conversation, it is about, I care about that, but not as much as you do, and here's the consequences or the trade-offs. So you're right, but I just thought that's just how I got through, going to these bridal expos for 4 or 5 years around the country.
We digress, but the point is around the story,
budgets,
right?
And about making sure that you get the right people along on the journey and the ones who are going to have the good time with you versus the ones who are going to be the spoilers. That's right.
So type number 1 is social wealth. Type number 2 is financial wealth. Type number 3 is time wealth, the most important to get your time back. Yep. And just to remember, if you spend $4,000 a month in living expenses and you have $8,000 in the bank, your wealth is 2 months. Yeah. Like, let that land.
Well, that's the time wealth. That's right. If you're spending at that same level, that's your money stretch right there.
Yeah.
In terms of how much before it runs out.
Stay tuned. We've got a few exciting things on how people can measure that coming up on the platform, which is our Money Smarts platform. So you should check it out. So, okay. So 1 status, 2, 1 social wealth, 2 is financial wealth, 3 is time wealth, 4, Ben, is physical wealth, your health. So Mahatma Gandhi poignantly can't even say that
well,
word.
it's a tough word, mate. I don't think I
Stated,
can go there either.
it is health that is real wealth, not pieces of gold and silver. So anyone who's listening to this has been touched by a family or loved one. My dad is having challenging health. That has never been more true, right?
Yep.
Josh Billings said, health is like money. We never have a true idea of its value until we lose it. Hippocrates said, health is the greatest of human blessings. So I can tell a story, Ben, where you mentioned it before. I was so driven early that all that mattered to me before I got a concept of the other three was financial wealth, and it came at the expense of health. I suffered from adrenal fatigue, which is why I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, all these things.
Why you eat all that grass? But I respect that.
And I don't drink alcohol and much at all. I've probably had 1 or 2 drinks in the last 5 years.
Yep.
So that's largely because of a health challenge, not because I'm trying to be some guru who doesn't believe in drinking alcohol. Because to be honest, I'd love to have a beer with you sometimes.
Yeah.
But it just has an enormous. It takes an enormous toll on my health. So then my son, we took him through a journey back in 2016, and I just said, I'm all in, not only because I want to support him, but I reckon there's some health benefits for me, and I'm really lucky that that's helped. But I'm lucky that I pulled out of the nosedive, because at the time I remember thinking, my physical health is failing, but I've still got my mental will and drive, and I'll just out-will it, right?
Yeah. No.
But there comes a point where that currency runs out, because if your health's dropping and you've got mental drive, there comes a point where it gets to equilibrium, and then it drops, and then that's a nasty place for you to go mentally. So I do have it. I am talking from experience here about health being true wealth. I'm lucky I've got it back to a 90% level, but I still have to watch what I eat, what I drink, and some of the choices that I make, because I still have a legacy of that adrenal fatigue that came from just drive all the time. Yeah. I can assure you, if anyone's listening to that and you're in the middle of that, there is a cost. There is a toll. It does come. So don't chase 1 and 2 at the expense of 3 and 4.
Yeah, health is your wealth, and obviously what they talk about is healthy, wealthy and wise. I mean, we still want to make sure that there is some attention on money too, because we also see stories out there about people not being able to get the best healthcare or the best way to support them. So that is the challenge around that. But we always say, you don't want to be killing yourself in the process of making money that you won't be able to access to get that time. But what we're also talking about, plan to become what you plan to become. So I'm obviously thrilled that I'm going away for a couple of months, which was planned years ago as part of that. And I know that is going to do an enormous amount for my mental health in terms of being able to tune out as well. So I think from that point of view, we never want to forget that your health is your wealth. Get that right, get your mindset right, and then start to work on those other areas. Don't overcook it when it comes to status and those types of things, and start working on your money management and getting that money working harder for you, because your greatest freedom of all and the biggest wealth of all is the time wealth. So, that to me is, if we've done our job, it's that, people who are going to be going on this journey for the next couple of decades or whatever can lift their heads up over the fence and go, I got this, I'm good here, everything's in good shape. So I'm getting that balance right when it comes to all of those 4 levels or 4 types of wealth.
Well said. My closing statement on physical wealth is simply this, Ben. If you've ever been to a funeral, my question is, have you ever seen a hearse towing a trailer?
No, there is no money coming in behind them, mate.
There is no hearse towing a trailer, folks, so it doesn't come with you. So make sure that you get that right. So let's summarise again. So the first one was social wealth, which is status. 2 is financial wealth, which is around money. 3rd one is time wealth, which is around the freedom. And 4th is physical wealth, which is your health. So do not let the pursuit of 1 and 2 rob you of 3 and 4. So there you go, folks. There's the 4 types of wealth. How are you tracking in the 4 areas? Hopefully you've got some balance, but let's hope that hearing this, if you're imbalanced and you're only chasing one particular one at the expense of the others, let's hope that you can course correct. Hey, my life hack today, Ben, is really simply, if someone gives you something that's great, take a photo of yourself using or enjoying it and sending it to them. sometimes that speaks louder than simply saying thanks. So one of the things, because I'm over here in Victoria and my family's often over in Perth, they might send the boys a present. So I tend to try and at the very least take a photo, but quite often what I'll do is I'll take a little video, talk to the video, get the kids saying thanks, enjoying it, send it over, and the receipt of that on the other end is enormous and makes the other person feel like the gift of giving was worthwhile because they get to experience that feeling. So that is my life hack today, folks. Try that out, see if that works for you. What's making property news?
So Bryce, I thought I'd go granular today. I caught an auction result over the last weekend, that just caught my eye because I love these stories about, what they originally sold for and what they sold for today, right? So there was this particular auction in Haberfield in Sydney, and if you don't know what Haberfield is, it's got these beautiful suburb, right? You've got these beautiful period style, what we call owner-occupier appeal style homes in that particular area. But what I also like to see is like when someone says, so in this particular case, this property about 48 years ago sold for $32,000. And here's the context, it sold for 3.255 million on the weekend. Oops. So of course I'm starting to work out the annual rate of return on that. But it gets more important when you actually have a look at the physical property. Because if it's in original condition, and that's what caught my eye, because you see lots of these all the time where, that those values are not uncommon. But when you see the property in its original condition with its original kitchens and everything like that, and you go, wow, there's been no artificial inflation on the actual dwelling itself because everything was original. And so what has really happened in terms of land value with this improvement on the land? And so I got into my calculator and I back tested it to see what it's been, and off we go. So it's over 10% compounding, just a little over 10% if it is 48 years. Now I don't know the exact month, but they reported in there about 50 years ago. So I put it in the calculator at 48 years. That's close to the 5 decades that the daughter talked about what the parents had paid for it. That's a good measure of basically land doing the ultimate lifting and the location and the appeal of all the things that we talked about over that time. Now, if the long-term average across Australia is 6 or 7, this property has obviously outperformed that, and it hasn't been through any additional features or revamping of the asset. It's just basically said that it's delivered an outperform result over 50 years, and if you can get that in those areas, good luck to you. Good luck to you.
How much of a difference does that 3% make over with the 50 years as the time? Like imagine just putting 32,000 in there and just doing that at 7% and seeing the discrepancy. We actually do have a calculator in our course, Ben, that allows you to do all those what ifs. So
yes, it does.
It's one of the free bonuses. But you're about to refer to something?
Well, no, I was obviously because we're together, right? I can actually show you some of the old pics, but it's lost on a podcast. So
well, what we'll do is we'll put the link in to the show notes. Yeah. But people will be able to see that it's got some charm and
it's basic, right? There is nothing in here that you're saying to yourself like if you look at land size 830/39, and apparently, if I remember the story correctly, because I only picked it up on the weekend, they're going to keep the original property and reboot it, right? So they're going to build on the bones of the property. But that to me just sort of says, yeah, that's it. Like look at the.
Well, just to build some context for an audio audience, it wasn't until the 6th photo that the agent was prepared to give you a look inside the actual
That is
property.
a good point, yes. So we'll definitely put the link in the show notes so you can see exactly they've bought land, but they potentially want to bring back the charm of the old property and then potentially put the contemporary piece on the back, which makes sense to me. So still plenty to spend, even though you've just dropped 3.2 to 5 million on the land. Yep. So there you go.
Well said, Benji.
That's what's making property news, mate.
So folks, if you've enjoyed obviously the conversation that we've had today, we certainly want to encourage you to go and have a look at the course, Start and Build. So thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build, because ultimately we want you to get in control of all those 4 types of wealth, not just the one. And you are able to actually see what it takes to build out a passive income that doesn't revolve around status, that gives you a very clear picture of where you want to be, helps you get your time back and allow you to do the things that you actually want to do to make a contribution as we work through those 7 grades of financial well-being. And there is no suggestion that you need to renovate, redevelop or give up your weekends within that course. So in terms of that health, the the physical wealth. It's not big stress. We're putting buffers in place.
Correct.
3 to 5 properties. It's certainly not asking you to become the next property guru and have hundreds and hundreds of properties. So again, I want to encourage you to round out this discussion is to just go check it out. Go and have a look on the page, see what's involved in the course. And as I say, we're putting it on sale this week for a reason. We want to get it into as many hands as we possibly can so that people can actually take advantage of what we consider to be the Roaring 20s. Now, Bernard Salt was on the podcast last week.
Yes.
The amount of feedback that we got was enormous. We asked him about the Roaring 20s. He said that is going to be his view, that it will be the Roaring 20s. So if you're able to set, and we are in a very strong FOMO environment right now, so you need to be able to take advantage of the decade that's coming, be able to navigate the FOMO market that we're in, and make sure that you make really great decisions. So I certainly want to encourage you to do that. Links will be in the show notes. There'll be some stuff over on our socials. Just go and have a look.
Beautiful, mate. Well said.
All right, folks. Well, there's a fair bit covered. We've got a lot of exciting plans still to come with some new frameworks and things that we want to expand out over the coming weeks. But until next week, Ben.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
See you next week, folks. Hey there, folks. Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listened to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarizes the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.